Welcome to another episode of Progress, Potential, and Possibilities, discussions with fascinating people designing a better tomorrow for all of us. I'm your host, Ira Pastor.
Welcome, everybody, again to another episode of our show, bringing you another really fascinating guest today who is using innovation to create a better tomorrow on some very unique fronts. Today, we have the honor of being joined by Aram Kradjian, who is Director of Research and Innovation at Jaguar Land Rover, where he is focused on heading the global research department involved in spearheading cutting-edge research, collaborating with the tech industry, government, regulators, as well as academia, as well as involvement in product design, innovation and strategy, all with the goal of helping to drive the latest technologies and innovations into their unique products and services at Jaguar Land Rover. Aram also serves as a visiting professor in technology innovation at King's College London. He has his bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from American University of Beirut. Did his master's in production systems engineering, RWTH Aachen University. He also has his MBA in management at INSEAD. When he's not thinking about cars, he has hobbies like being a private pilot. He's very enthusiastic about space. A really interesting guy, very well-rounded. We're going to have a really great conversation today on a bunch of different topics. Aram Kradjian, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be on the show, and thank you for the wonderful opening. I'm glad to be here.
It's great to have you. As we typically do, I would love to start off just by handing you the floor for a little bit to further talk about you, because you had this fascinating background. Would love to hear a little bit about how it all started. Take a little time to go into everything from where you grew up, the development of your interest, not just in STEM, but in engineering, your interest in business, of course, and a little bit of that early career journey. I think that'd be a great way to get things going.
Sure. So growing up, I was always fascinated by STEM, and particularly chemistry and physics, and anything that had to do with discovering and understanding science. So I actually grew up in Toronto. And then I had the fortune to live and work and study in the Middle East, in Beirut, then in Germany, and then also in Asia, in Singapore when I was doing my MBA, and finally now in the last 10 years in the UK. And as a kid, I was just very curious, like many other kids, asking hundreds of questions a day, trying to figure things out, learning about space, technology. And for example, I do remember that as I was growing up, I was passionate about recycling and renewable energy. And I tried to build this paper recycling machine that could be like your washing machine in your home, and you can just throw in paper and out comes fresh recycled paper. And it was a bit of a childhood dream. I built some prototypes. That's what got me into engineering, because I was thinking about this innovation process. How do you start off with an idea like that? I made a few samples of recycled paper. I tested with chemicals so that they can stick. You can print on it. It was very exciting. The business case didn't really add up. There was too much energy that was required. But 20 years later, 2018, Epson created the first ever paper recycling machine for the office. It's a huge machine. You can look it up online, and costs a fortune. But I think in this trend of future technology sustainability, we will have to have these machines like our washing machines at home, where you can just throw in used equipment, plastics, glass, and so on, and just get 3D printed new materials and new things. So that's what got me into engineering. I was always interested in starting with a concept, an idea, and then figuring out how you can build this machine. It wasn't just about cars. It wasn't just about, you know, machines and creations. It was also about spaceships and airplanes. So that whole industry was a very fascinating space for me. And then that's why I went on and studied mechanical engineering, and then specialized in manufacturing and production technology in Aachen. But then I also wanted to make sure that I have this broader mindset of how do you bring all of that together? The business case needs to add up. There needs to be a good marketing strategy. And that got me into consulting, where this was all about big picture, doing some strategy and market feasibility for corporates, big companies globally in Germany and around the world. And then I definitely wanted to do my MBA so that I can be more rounded, build my business understanding. Once I had done that, my passion was to come back to a company where I could deliver this innovation, drive some of these amazing product creations. And that got me into Jaguar Land Rover. And that's where I've been since in the last 10 years. And as you said, the last 4 years, I've been leading the research and innovation, really privileged to be doing that. It's like a dream job, coming up with new ideas with the team and then finding ways to industrialize that, commercialize that further.
Outstanding, outstanding. And, you know, it's very interesting because as you and I were chatting a little bit in the past, I mentioned that, you know, I spent the last couple of decades in the pharmaceutical industry, and there was an area where sort of innovation has changed significantly over time. And it used to be that we were pharmaceutical industry, we would do research and development and manufacturing and commercialization, and we'd produce drugs at the end of the day. Fast forward 30 years or so, it's an industry that does very little research and development anymore, very little of its own manufacturing, does a lot of sales. And the products that it manufactures drugs, but it also makes all sorts of digital therapeutics and the whole scope of novel biotechnologies. So a lot of sort of the innovation process and the output of the innovation process has changed significantly over the years. Talk a little bit about some of the comparisons in terms of, you know, your time in the automotive space, because I can imagine too, you know, obviously you make cars, but you make all sorts of other things nowadays, whether it's electric vehicles or a lot of the other technologies we'll be touching on. Talk a little bit about how sort of that's changed over time and how the innovation process has also changed for you along the way.
Sure. And as you know, the innovation process and the innovation cycles have started to shrink over the years. If you go back 200-300 years to the Industrial Revolution, innovation cycles for big technologies were about 60-70 years. In the last 20-30 years, innovation cycles are as short as 20 years. Mm-hmm. And this has affected different sectors, different industries. And so we live today in an age of exponential change. 20 years ago, automotive was a bit more traditional in its innovation cycles. And with Uber, that changed completely the mobility space. And the onset of electric vehicles, we need to also think fast about how can we innovate faster, how can we do innovation in a way that's sustainable, that can leapfrog the competition. And this has opened up the door to open innovation, where we can work together with startups, with universities, but also partnering up with different players. Because today in the automotive world, especially with the big investments on autonomous driving, electric vehicles, it's very difficult to do all of it as one company. So it's really important to forge the right strategic partnership. So at Jaguar Land Rover, for example, we forged a partnership with NVIDIA, a multi-year strategic partnership to create the future autonomous driving capabilities, and then also the future AI-driven features for our customers. But also, we've been working with startups And there, for example, we again started this partnership with Plug and Play, which is a big accelerator for startups and innovation platform. And we hope to bring in fast-paced innovation from startups so that we can join that with our processes internally. And hopefully we can come up with some new technologies, leapfrog some of the incremental innovation that is part of our day-to-day activities.
And, I just sort of glancing through the news a little bit before, preparing for this show, Google Jaguar Land Rover and various articles come up. There was, I think about a week ago, there was this big article about how you're going to be training about 30,000 people to work on the electric vehicles. We had Steve Eiley on a couple months ago talking about some of the wellness within the automotive inside the car initiatives. There was a really cool article from like the other day, something called CV2X, which talks about cellular vehicle to everything technology and how your car will ultimately be connected to everything else out there as we're driving along. Talk a little bit about some of what you're involved in terms of some of these different projects. I know you have your hands in a lot of these different areas, and a little bit about sort of where the directives in the automotive industry come from. The sort of the internal directives. Hey, we want to have this amazing fleet of electric vehicles by 2037, whatever that may be. And second part of that, sorry, long question. Talk about a little bit the startup innovation ecosystem, ultimately how you go about collaborating with the startups, collaborating with the small academic labs for some of the next gen stuff too.
Sure, let me start unpicking some of that. So with the strategy that we've set for Jaguar Land Rover that's called Reimagine, we plan to have a sustainable, rich, modern luxury vehicles for our most discerning customers and create that over the next generation. A lot of that comes from the importance for a positive impact to the environment. It comes from the starting point where we care a lot about our customers. We want to really understand what the customers are expecting. And of course, with all of that, electric vehicles, convenience, modern luxury, joined up with sustainability are what we're kind of focusing on in the next years. So the things you've read about the future around training 30,000 people or the future for electric vehicles, it's because, again, there is this exponential growth. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you could read forecasts saying, oh, we're going to have 5% electric vehicles in 20 years. Today, we're already past that point, and it's not a linear growth anymore. So in the next couple of years, we need to be investing more in electric vehicles. We need to be investing more in batteries, second life, circular economy, sustainability. We also want to make sure, and we'll touch on maybe later on sustainability, get to net zero to make sure that we're having a positive impact on the environment. So we have 2039 goals to get to net zero as a company. So all of these are part of our future DNA now that drive the strategic themes and directions for us to innovate and develop our future vehicles. Hopefully that covers some of the points. And you mentioned the elements around well-being, and that's also part of the bigger picture of the environment. Our future customers are more aware about health, pollution, well-being, and therefore in our vehicles, for example, we can better understand the pollution level with the PM 2.5 measure. Dr. Steve Eiley, that you had on the show previously, spoke about how we've innovated the pathogen removal technology, which actually was done by my research team. So we're really proud of that. That is our new Range Rover vehicle. And it's basically an ionizer that destroys pathogens that are in the cabin. And we had the opportunity to really do some tests with a lab during COVID. And because it was so relevant, we pushed it through and we accelerated that innovation to get it onto our vehicles in the last couple of years. But this is only the beginning, because the cabin space will become more important. The health, the well-being, the comfort is more and more important for our customers in the future who are more aware of health-related elements. So we're keen on innovating in that space in the future as well. And then with regards to your point on startups, yes, startups and universities, they're a great way for us to step away from our day-to-day incremental innovation ideas or approach and jump into everything is possible, moonshot ideas are possible. You know the Clayton Christensen's innovator's dilemma that companies, big companies, are used to incremental innovation because it's safe, it's easy, it just keeps on the linear trend. And so you need to do that, of course, as a big organization, but you also need to protect the future and find fast pace, completely outside future breakthroughs where you're not worried about, is this going to be possible at the beginning? It's about thinking about an ambition. It's about thinking about a moonshot goal, and then you can work through the details of that. So that's what we try to do with universities, the top universities in the UK and around the world, and also startups who have those big ambitions. And sometimes they are protected from the big corporate bureaucracies that are there because they're more agile. So we try to latch onto that, learn from them, and try to innovate together.
Excellent, excellent. You know, in addition to the work you do at Jaguar Land Rover, sort of in running global R&D initiatives, as well as teaching, you also write extensively about the themes of innovation from the perspective of simplicity, from the perspective of diversity, and also sustainability. And I'd like to sort of go into each of one of these independently and really talk about some of these concepts, because I think they're really refreshing and you know, elegant in the way you lay some of this stuff out. The first, you know, I think it'd be very interesting. We talked about this obviously before, but you're very passionate about the concept of simplicity. You wrote a piece in user interface planning entitled "Innovation is Simple: Get Your Thinking Clean," and you talk about examples like where Nokia lost and the smartphone by Apple won, the Google search engine, the Rubik's Cube. We don't always have to, you know, while moonshots are great, there's a lot of other simple things that win for us as well in industry. Talk a little bit about the role of simplicity as you see it in the innovation process.
Sure. This is definitely an area that is a passion of mine. And just to clarify, simplicity doesn't mean that it's technologically simple. It doesn't mean that it's not sophisticated, right? Mm-hmm. It just means that the experience is intuitive. It means that you have done everything so that it gets to a level of perfection that is reductive, that is less is more. So from Ms. van der Rohe's Bauhaus thinking of less is more in terms of the design concept. And this aligns also with the direction we're going as a company, where we're saying that our future designs and our future vehicles, even the current ones, are about modern luxury, which is all about reductive design, which is all about less is more. And it's fascinating because Steve Jobs once said, simpler can be harder than complex, because when you've got too many things together, it's easy to add new things on top. But really getting to a very simple, clean state where the user understands how to interact is usually much harder than trying to come up with something that just has lots of features, lots of things together. And that's the example of the Nokia versus the simple Apple phone. That's one phone that has one button. Again, the Google search bar, you know, people have said, oh, this is simple to do. You've just got one search bar. But then, of course, the engineers know that behind that search bar, there is a massive algorithm that is probably one of the most complex in the world. Yeah. So that's the concept behind this. And if you can get an innovation process that, at least on the customer front, provides simplicity, ease of use, convenience, then chances are it's going to be successful because you're solving the customer problem well. So I am passionate about that, and I believe in that. And actually, it also aligns with the direction we're going as a company in terms of our future products and our future design.
And you know, another area, well, you were thinking about it with the recycling the washing machine at a very young age, but sustainability very important to you during the whole innovation process. And you've written about not just you know, about Jaguar Land Rover's transition from fossil fuel vehicles to hybrid to fully electric, but also all aspects of the carbon footprint at the company, from environmentally friendly materials, natural lighting processes within your manufacturing plants, a lot of other sort of tangential innovations bringing sustainability to the fore. Talk a little bit about sustainability, if you would.
Yeah, this is another interesting area, and it's very important. When I teach engineering ethics, among other things, or engineering and technology ethics to students at the university, I give them the example and say, one of the most amazing inventions in the world was in 1907 by Bakelite, who invented plastic, basically Bakelite. And at the time, it was probably the best thing that we had done as engineers or scientists, that we had solved so many of the world's problems of practical things we can have around us. Mm-hmm. No one really at the time was saying, all of this is going to end up in the oceans. It's going to become a massive environmental challenge. And today you've got microplastics in the water, even in our bodies, in our blood. So it's a massive issue. And thinking about the future generation, we know that going electric will save on carbon emissions and will help in the direction of the environment, but it doesn't come without its challenges. All of those batteries will also, they are harmful for the environment. So we need to find ways of, first of all, sustainable design, finding ways of reusing those batteries, which is one of the reasons why we've partnered with a company called Pramac, where we can reuse those batteries from our electric vehicles. And then we can charge the home, we can reuse them as second life or even third life after that. And then the other area that's really important is around recycling, because at this point in time, there's so much around chemistry and science that we're still figuring out to be able to completely recycle and draw all of those materials that go into the lithium-ion batteries or other future battery chemistries for our vehicles. And as more and more electric vehicles hit the roads, it will become harder to mine these battery materials. So there's even more reason for us to find good ways of recycling them, and also finding reuses in a circular economy to make sure that we can reuse them at least a few times before they end up being recycled or dismantled. And all of this is part of our goals as a company, but also as engineers, scientists in the world, to make sure we're also thinking about that positive societal impact, because it is going to become more and more relevant, probably, again, exponentially. We're at that tipping point now where every day it's in the news. 10, 15 years ago, it was present, but people were not talking about recycling as much. People were not talking about sustainability. Now every company has a sustainability department almost, and so on.
Talk a little bit about diversity in the innovation process. This is something else that you've written about. Clearly, Jaguar Land Rover, multinational automotive company on different continents. Talk about this very important piece of the innovation puzzle.
So diversity is also a personal important topic of mine, perhaps because I also come from an ethnic minority. I'm Armenian by origin, and I've always felt, living in different countries around the world, embracing different cultures, appreciating different cultures, backgrounds, diverse thinking, I've realized that good ideas and novel ideas come from this diverse thinking. And so long before we talked about how diversity and inclusion drives performance, because now there is science that says if you've got a good, diverse and inclusive team, you will have better performance, bottom line performance. I was always for this thinking and making sure that teams and the innovation process includes this. And it's not a secret. If you go back and look at examples of innovations, you realize that whenever you've had cross-industry thinking, or someone with a different experience, someone who has a mixed background and so on, we've come up with better designs, more innovative designs. A good example I was reading the other day was the first foldable, lightweight child stroller was not invented by someone who was working for children's toys or accessories. It was actually invented by a retired aeronautical engineer who got the idea from a landing gear, a retractable landing gear. And he noticed, so basically he noticed that his daughter was struggling to get the buggy up the plane. And this is just one example. They say that the McDonald's and other drive-thrus are based on the Formula One pit stops concept and approach. So it's important to bring in different thinking, mixed backgrounds, gender, and other forms of diversity and inclusion to get the best out of innovation. And you are right, we have fully embraced this at Jaguar Land Rover, like other companies have. And we now know that it will have a positive impact in the long run on our vehicles, because also our customers are diverse. So making sure that we can understand our customers globally, it's really important to have that thinking as well.
You know, it's very interesting because when Dr. Eiley was on a couple of months ago, you know, we talked about sort of the role of the chief medical officer in the company, that it is a you know, it's no longer sort of this role that, oh, we'll invite them once in a while to these meetings, and it's sort of a crucial piece of the puzzle, especially when you have things like pandemics that come along and disrupt the business. You want a medical doctor there to you know, not just, you know, focus on how we're going to deal with our employees, but sort of really rethinking the entire company during you know, such an event should it happen. And you know, you've, from the perspective of R&D, innovation, you know, this obviously comes into play in your domain as well. And you wrote this other really fascinating article in Illumination magazine entitled "Innovation in the Time of Pandemics." And you talk about constraints inspire innovation until they don't. Talk a little bit about the last couple of years. What have you learned from the pandemic per the innovation process at JLR?
Yeah, thank you for pointing towards that article. And I think one of the key elements in that article was around the quote from Darwin saying that ultimately the companies that survive, or the species that survive, are not necessarily the strongest ones or the most intelligent ones, but actually the ones that adapt best to change. Yeah. And I strongly believe that also in industry, this is true. When you've got pandemics, when you've got crises, when you've got different situations, companies that succeed are the ones that can adapt to this changing environment. And if you think about all the technologies coming our way, it's also really important to be able to adapt very quickly to electric vehicles. It's important to adapt to the future of computing, which is also coming very fast, artificial intelligence, and so on. And in the last couple of years, we've definitely better understood all of those disruptive technologies coming our way, and we've tried to gear up so that we can protect against these in the future.
What you just mentioned artificial intelligence. I think that'd be a really nice segue to sort of look at some of these next generation tools. We've touched on them on previous shows, but obviously they all have applicability in your shop, everything from the artificial intelligence for the self-driving vehicles. We talked about edge computing and all these really, you know, our car nowadays is like a supercomputer. And then also we've talked a little bit on shows about this concept of the digital twin, how, you know, we can do a lot of things sort of in the virtual spaces before we actually create that production facility or put those new models together. What are the tools that you're most excited about? What are tools that are concerning to you, if there may be some? And you know, looking out 5-10 years, what really gets you excited?
Yeah, I mean, this is a fascinating space, and it's really at the heart of what I'm trying to achieve and understand the future technologies. And as I mentioned at the beginning, this exponential change that's coming our way, just as a fun example, if you go back to the first ever computer virus, I think with IBM, I think it was 1971, called a virus called Brain that was released. And at that point, probably very harmless. Fast forward 20 years, 1991, and you would think a lot would have changed, but actually at that point, there were only 50 known viruses, computer viruses, roughly. So 20 years took only 50 more viruses. And then suddenly you fast forward another 30 years to 2021, and you've got more than 1 billion known viruses, probably many billion more of unknown viruses and planned. They say that over 30% of the internet traffic is spamming, hacking, and other things that are taking over. So if you go back to 1991, no one could have said really that cybersecurity is going to be the biggest trend in the future, one of the biggest trends in the future. Today, as a company, but also many other companies, we're really focused on bringing in-house the talent of cybersecurity, finding the scarce talent around the world to make sure our products are more robust, secure. Privacy, trust, security, cyber are becoming very important topics. And so in the same light, this exponential change is something that we don't necessarily always spot when we're thinking about the future generation, because we think in a linear way when we look at the future, similar to how you're looking out in the horizon. We don't see the curvature of the earth because we see in that linear direction. So a good example that I was reading a book the other day, and it was mentioning the Human Genome Project. I don't know if you remember the details of that.
Yep.
When it started off, it was this mammoth task, and it took 5 years to get to 1% decoding of the Human Genome Project. And the skeptics said, it's going to take hundreds of years to finish this whole project because it's taken you 5 years. And then it almost doubled every year after that. So within 7 years, it was completed. So a total of 13 years. And many of the new nascent technologies like quantum computing are at that point where people say, oh, you're talking about sci-fi and quantum computing is so far into the future. But actually, if it is at the same stage as where it was with the Human Genome Project or the viruses example, it will become mainstream in the next 10 years. It's not going to take necessarily 20 or 30 years. The same with AI technology. And together, if you bring those two things together, you can see that AI has recently actually outperformed Moore's law. So Moore's law being that every 18 months, the computing power is doubled,
Yep.
which is already quite exponential. And we're seeing that AI is starting to exceed this exponential growth. People are talking about Nevin's law, perhaps, which is even a faster growth rate. And if you think about it that way, you realize that in the next 10 years, we might see some of these technologies become mainstream and land in ways that we can't really understand today. So these are things that really excite me, interest me. And of course, we need to work on these, understand them, because our cars need to be safe, because we need to make sure that we work closely with the technologies and tools we've got at hand. So what can we do more for our customers with AI? How can we protect against quantum computing attacks that might become available in the future? I know that banks are already working on this as well, because it will happen at some point. I hope that gives you a bit of a perspective on this.
Absolutely, absolutely. We have a decent amount of what I'll call the next generation that watch and listen to our show. And as I mentioned in the intro, you studied mechanical engineering, production systems engineering, you went to business school. Talk a little to that next generation that may be listening. What do you, for the folks that hear the show, obviously you're an extremely cool guy that's doing so much. For the next generation that's coming along that may want to work with you at Jaguar Land Rover, be the next Aram Kradjian down the road, some advice here. What are you looking for in terms of sort of educational backgrounds, advice you may give them in terms of those that are just sort of starting out, following their undergrad at university? Take the floor on that one and give some advice to that population.
Sure, a pleasure. I think one of the main things is make sure you continue following your passion. I think it's important that people excel at things that they really enjoy, work on things that they really enjoy. I don't think this has changed. It was good advice when people told me about it many years ago. I think this advice is still very important. I think in the future, programming is going to become far easier for anyone to adopt and use. So nowadays, we're starting to see that you can program by just speaking with natural language programming. So you don't have to know all of the details of the code. So I think it's going to become a day-to-day part of our lives, programming and being able to integrate this into any kind of science or even literature studies, humanity studies at universities. And I would say it's important to embrace this because it will become more and more part of our daily lives. It already is for most of the software computer engineers, but also for any others in the future. Other pieces of advice, we need to be thinking about the environment and the impact we have on society, whether it's about software, whether it's about hardware, digital products that we're creating. Anything that we do will have some kind of effect on humanity. And at the point where we're creating that, like the example of plastics and Bakelite, it's very hard to understand what impact it will have in the future. So we need to be thinking more about the impact on society. And anyway, as engineers, for those who are going to study engineering, it is part of the ethical code to make sure we have a positive impact on society. Hope that gives a bit of perspective.
Absolutely, absolutely spot on. What else is coming up for you in 2022 as we head into 2023? Obviously, you're leading the research and innovation. You're teaching. Any conferences that you're going to be presenting at, other forums where people may be able to listen to you, meet you as we come out of this pandemic? Anything else that's going on that you may want to mention in the coming months?
In the coming months, I'm still going to be focused on delivering innovation to our customers. That's the primary goal. I don't have any specific conferences planned, but anyone can reach out to me. I'm always interested in having conversations with startups, new ideas, whether they're in the battery chemistry space or lightweight materials, future AI computing technologies, quantum computing technologies, electric drive units, or just in general about future innovation. I'm always interested in meeting people, like-minded people, and people who can help us on the journey to deliver amazing products to our customers.
Excellent. Are you getting any flying time in the middle of all this innovation work? And when's the last time you got up in the air?
It has been some time. I think during COVID, that hasn't been easy, but I always tell my friends, and actually the friends I've also taken up, whenever you go up, you feel this sense of detachment from the world because you can see everything below you. You feel that you're in control, but also you feel that you can meditate because you're separated from all of the challenges that happen on ground. So it's a real pleasure when I do get the chance, because it's a great way to disconnect from the day-to-day challenges and also just enjoy something different. And maybe if you were to come to London sometime, we can go up on a flight and travel somewhere.
I'll take you up on that one. Absolutely. No, it's a really great journey that you've been on. I really enjoy listening to your story, reading the various pieces that you have out there, and we're going to put a lot of links in the bio to the show where people can find you, not just at Jaguar Land Rover, but your publications. A really fascinating portfolio, and I'm just so excited of all this research that you're spearheading and really rooting you on as you continue to do it. For everybody that is going to be listening to this episode of our show across the various podcast networks or watching on our YouTube channel, again, you've been listening to Aram Kradjian, Director, Research and Innovation, Jaguar Land Rover, focusing on innovating at a global scale, spearheading this cutting edge research. It's Aram, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to come talk to us for a little while and educate us on all these themes. Obviously, thank you for everything you're doing there to really move forward the area of automotive technologies and science. And as we say on our show, thanks for helping create a better tomorrow via what you're doing. A really great story.
Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure and honor to be on the show, and I hope that this has been insightful and helpful. I look forward to hearing any comments and feedback, and looking forward to connecting with like-minded innovators and interesting people.
Great seeing you.